Mom, how did Mickey get there so quick? He was just over at the parade. Yeah, sometimes separating reality from the fantasy that's in the parks can be an interesting challenge. Here's how we tried to do some of that. So you can see I'm not in my normal backdrop set. I'm kind of out on the road, and it has been a crazy week. Hey, life as a pastor. But I wanted to make sure I got my video out to you because it's fun doing these things. And had a couple really good questions come in this last week. And one of them basically involved, how do you keep the reality of what's going on in the parks completely separate from the fantasy that you try to encourage people to have? For example, meeting Mickey. If you have a child that just saw Mickey in a parade and then they turn around and walk into a meet and greet area and Mickey's already there, well, hey, Mom, how did he get there so quick? Or the other way around. A real good example is even some of the park transformations for the holidays. How do they do that so quick? And when kids start asking, it starts to break down some of the fantasy that you're trying to preserve a little bit. And, so how do you do that? Well, that's actually one of the things that you even start in traditions going over, is how to preserve the fantasy. It's actually one of the 4 keys to the kingdom that you go over. There's 4 different things that cast members learn. Safety first above everything, courtesy, show, and efficiency. Well, show is a big thing with Disney, and that you are always trying to preserve the show. Everybody has a role that they play, and that role is part of the overall drama and production that is a person's visit into the parks. It's like walking into a giant play, and your whole job is to help preserve that so that it keeps being the show. You don't want to break that reality. And so sometimes it involves a little bit of creativity and finding ways to make sure that that show is preserved. For example, if a character has just been seen in a parade and then you turn around and there's the character again. Well, how do they do that? Well, in Mickey's case, it's pretty easy because, of course, Mickey has the sorcerer's hat that he wears. So he just uses a little bit of his magic. And that's actually one of the things that we would tell people a lot is Disney is very magical. There's a lot of magic that allows the characters to be able to move very quickly from place to place and to be able to do things like that. That way they don't have to take a break. They can get right over to where that person was waiting to meet them. And there's other ways that you would do it as well. One of my favorite ones was actually when you would be in the park October 31st, and you would see the pumpkins everywhere. It's obviously Halloween, it's Fall Festival, and then you turn around and the next day it's Christmas. All the Fall Festival decorations are down. Almost all the Christmas decorations are up. It's an amazing transformation in the whole entire park. Well, how on earth do they do that? Well, of course, Mickey comes out with his sorcerer's hat on, starts doing a little conducting, and poof, the park changes. And then, of course, the fairy godmother is out there. She's helping as well. And all of the little fairies are out there with their wands, and they're doing magic and making it all transform. And so you come up with these great stories to explain how it works, how it happens. One of my favorites actually involves all the pumpkins that are out during the Fall Festival at Disney. If you ever get a chance to go to Magic Kingdom during the Fall Festival times, September and October, there are pumpkins everywhere. Tons of them. Lots of pumpkins. Well, how on earth did you get so many pumpkins? Well, of course, Cinderella's fairy godmother is an expert with pumpkins. After all, she turned a pumpkin into a carriage. So Disney just brought in a bunch of different pumpkins and let the fairy godmother go to work, and that's how you get all of these things. And it's really neat because it allows you to have some fun, to be creative and come up with some great stories to be able to share with people, not just kids, but adults as well. And to see what kind of magic you can come up with and ways that you can preserve it, which for me was one of my favorite parts of working at Disney. It was a good challenge sometimes for my improvisational skills, because you could get asked questions that you would have no idea. Let me see. How am I going to come up with an answer for this? And then try to figure it out. Of course, everybody's familiar with the big wire that comes off of the castle. And, why is that wire there? Well, I've heard some great explanations. For me, that was the Prince's ESPN antenna. So that way he can make sure he gets to watch all of his football games. For other people, it was Tinkerbell drawing a line in the sky so she would know where to go at night. And just all sorts of great stories that people could come up with to help find ways to preserve that magic, to preserve that story for everybody. It was important because, again, that key, the show, you always wanted to preserve the show. You did not want reality to intrude into the park. And part of that was so that people could escape the reality for a while. Let's be honest, life stinks a lot of times. And there's a lot of people that they come to Disney and they are going through some very hard times. And you just want to get out and forget it for a while. And that's what the show is all about, is to allow you to forget the real world outside and how it works, and to be able to set aside the real thinking and think about the fantasy of it, and to just pretend that it's all real, and to imagine, and, you know, for kids of all ages, for adults, to just let go of reality. And so we constantly work to try to come up with ways to do that. For things that might intrude upon the show, you wanted to make sure that it didn't happen. It's why if you were meeting with a character and the character had to step off to take a break, there's always a story and an explanation as to why they're stepping off, why they're stepping out for just a minute. Pluto's going to go bury his bone, or he's going to check on his buried bone. For Minnie, she's going to go check on her cheesecake that she's cooking. For Daisy, it's an upside down cake. For Goofy, he's getting a call from his son Max. And there's always a reason for him to be able to step out for just a minute. And, you know, of course, reality, we know what's happening, but we don't see that. We don't see the exchange that may be taking place. But for us, it's the same one. Going out, stepping out for a minute, coming right back, and there they are. Problem solved, and you just keep right on going. It made for a lot of fun to see even the way the characters sometimes would come up with explanations if they needed to. We had a lot of fun with it, to say the least. There were some definite times that I got some very interesting questions about how things happened and why they happened, and trying to make sure that guests didn't see certain parts of the things. You know, you would never allow the guests, for example, to see any place where guests or where cast members might be changing. Another good example even of preserving the show, not just with that as I'm thinking about it here, was even the rules that cast members had as far as eating and drinking on stage or using the restrooms. We were not allowed to do that at all. And part of that was because we were essentially fantasy figures. You know, for guests coming in, we're part of the show. We're part of the forgetting reality. And so if you were to see a cast member eating their lunch in front of everybody, it would kind of break down some of that reality a little bit. It definitely would if you saw them using the restroom. And so we were not allowed to do that at Disney. Disney was very good in that they built a lot of facilities backstage so that as a cast member, you did not have to do that. There was always an employee restroom that was generally within easy reach and use, being able to step off backstage and be able to get to one. There were plenty of places to sit down and eat. Disney has lots of break rooms, lots of facilities, lots of kitchens that if you didn't bring a lunch, you could find a place that you could pick one up easily backstage. You didn't buy your food on stage generally. Now, there were a few cast members that if they had a longer break, they would take a couple minutes, change their clothes so you could not tell they were a cast member, and then they could step out real quick and buy something. But even then, they weren't supposed to eat it on stage if they were on break, even if they had changed clothes, because that could actually get you terminated, and you didn't really want that. Again, it was about trying to preserve the magic in the show. And most of the time, you didn't do that. In fact, it was very rare for most of us to eat on or to buy anything on stage. The entertainment people, I did see them do that a few times, and that's because when they changed out of the costumes that they had been performing in, you wouldn't recognize them, and you wouldn't necessarily know that what they were wearing was what a cast member would be wearing off on the side. So it made it just another way to help preserve the show, and it was all about preserving the show. So that's some of the ways that we kind of helped try to make sure that reality didn't steep into the fantasy. We were actors playing a role, and that was our ultimate goal, was to keep that role magical, to keep it preserved, to help people forget the reality. And it meant creativity, it meant imagination, it meant some really fun stories sometimes, all to help make sure that people could enjoy their time away. So What are questions that you may have heard and you wondered about the answers and were amazed at cast member answers and responses? I would love to hear those as well. Share them in the comments below. If you got questions and want to know how on earth we explain some other things, ask that. I'd love to be able to answer them for you, and who knows, you might even lead to a video idea. So don't hesitate to like and share the video as well. Subscribe if you haven't. Hey, look for my merchandise. I've got pins out along with shirts and other stuff. There's information down in the description below along with all sorts of links and other stuff. So check that description. Thank you so much for watching, and God bless. It's why if you were meeting with a character, yeah, there's a bloop to kick out. Quick test, trying to see if the wind and stuff is okay, if this microphone will help. Test. If you want to know whenever I have a new video out, well, hey, make sure you hit that button right there and subscribe. If you want to see another video right now, well, I've got a great one right here for you. And if you want to be like these wonderful people here and help support me financially on Patreon, well, check out that link right there and it'll take you to it. Thanks so much, and God bless.